It was a frosty winter's night, and I was sat upright in bed, staring blankly out of the slightly open window. For some reason unknown to me, I could not sleep. Again. 3 nights now without sleep. Thinking. Thinking what happened to me on that night. The night he saw me. It was last summer. One of the hottest summers we've ever experienced here. Me and my friends had signed up for camp. I was really nervous, as I'd never been before. To be honest, I didn't know what to expect. I was just relieved I wasn't going on my own. We'd arranged to meet beside the berry bush, near the river beforehand. It had become part of our summer routine, to pick a shitload of berries. I loved berries. They were so tasty, and they always taste better fresh off the bush. It's one of the most peaceful places to be, and that's hard to come by in such a big city. Normally, all I hear are police sirens, cars, and passing trains. There's really not a lot of activities to partake in here. So when the offer to go to this new summer camp came around, I literally jumped at the chance. So there I was, waiting, beside the berry bush, throwing the tiny pebbles at my feet into the water, mere yards from where I sat. Ruby was the first of my friends to arrive. She was a very petite, but obviously pretty girl. She always wore a red ribbon around her wrist. It was in memory of her dad, who passed away only 3 years earlier. His favourite colour was red. Ella was next to arrive. Her real name was Bella, but ever since the Twilight Saga she refused to answer to that name, and instead we called her Ella. She was a very tall brunette, and made it her preference to dress slightly old-fashioned, which wasn't a problem for her, coming from a well-off family. She always walked around as if she had been born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Deep down, though, she was one of the friendliest people you could ever meet. She was soon followed by Jack and Rusty. They were brothers, both the same age, give or take a few months. This they always argued about. Jack was average height and average build. He had sharp green eyes with sandy brown hair and always spoke with an air of arrogance. Rusty, on the other hand, was unkempt and always wore clothes that were 3 days old at the most. He was also average weight and height, but he had platinum blonde hair that was messy and always covered his left eye. He did this to cover the scar he had from childhood, which he received when he was knocked over by a speeding car driven by a drunk teenager. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Ella pounded down upon Rusty with slaps and punches.
What the fuck were you playing at last night, you moron?
What was that for?
You! Last night, throwing stones up at my window. I mean, were you trying to wake up my parents? If my dad had seen you, you'd have had his shotgun up your ass.
Oh, Rusty, what the fuck, man?
Now standing, with her hands on her hips, staring fixated on Rusty, he just stood there grunting. The rest of us just stood around in amazement at what we had just witnessed. Ella and Rusty were secretly dating. It would be a public relationship, only her dad was deeply religious and did not approve of Rusty at all. So they had to sneak off to see each other as often as they could. I don't mean to be a party pooper, but we're totally going to miss the bus if we don't move now. As we headed back to the community centre to wait for the bus, none of us spoke. We all walked in silence. The only sound that could be heard was the gentle rush of the current running down the river, and the birds chirping in the nearby trees. 1 p.m. had finally arrived, and the bus pulled up outside the centre.
Finally,
mumbled Ruby, as she always became impatient and annoyed waiting around. We all climbed onto the bus, and were greeted by the everyday cliques of college. A few of the jocks were huddled at the back of the bus, with a couple of the wannabe models nearby. The nerds were at the front of the bus, with their heads down fixated on a handheld game or smartphone. We just shuffled past and found our seats in the middle of the bus. The bus journey felt like it was never ending. I just kept my head in my book. I was reading Dante Alighieri's Dante's Inferno. I had just entered Paradiso when Ruby asked,
"What are you doing?"
"I'm reading."
"What's it about?"
Why does she always have to start asking questions when I'm getting to the good part? I thought to myself. It's about a man's struggle with his inner demons to reach heaven, be cleansed of all his sins, and reunited with his true love in paradise.
Boring.
Well, you did ask. Amongst the background chatter, I overheard one of the nerds speak of an old camp urban legend.
Yeah, they call him the Pale Man. Supposedly he lives in a dark part of the woods, near the campsite. Rumour has it that if you venture away from the camp after dark, you're in danger. They say, if he sees you, he hunts you down and devours you.
Bullshit! Dude, whatever meds you're on, I want some, 'cause that shit must be good for you to be imagining this much crap.
He laughed, and the rest of the bus laughed along. I didn't, however, as I had heard of this urban legend before. It was described as tall, with no eyes or nose on his face, just a torn mouth with razor-sharp teeth. His eyes were etched into the palms of his hands, and this was his only way of seeing. He walked with bent knees. His fingers were long and pointed, and incredibly sharp at the ends. He had a high-pitched screech when he spoke, and a screech pierced his lips if he saw you. This didn't scare me in the slightest. It just made me more and more interested the more I heard about it. The legend went on to state that several teenagers from the camp had gone missing over the years, but most people put it down to runaways. The remaining superstitious members believed the Pale Man had taken them. Yeah, but isn't there a lot more to the story than that? I mean, I read online somewhere that there were other incidences that were supposed to be unrelated, but readers believed that those were also the work of the Pale Man.
That's just crazy. How could they be related? The theory is he stalks the woods near the camp.
Yeah, so why would disappearances of the city have anything to do with the Pale Man?
I wouldn't be so quick to believe everything you read online. A lot of it is just propaganda or bullshit.
After that, everyone else went back to chatting among themselves, but I couldn't shake the thoughts from my mind. I'd always been interested in the paranormal, or anything scary and out of the ordinary, so it had me lost in my thoughts. For about another couple of hours, it wasn't until Ella yelled my name I actually snapped out of it.
Were you sleeping with your eyes open or something? I called you 3 times.
Sorry. I don't know where the hell I was there. It was time for us to be sorted into our dorms and shown where we'd be sleeping. It wasn't like your typical camp, where we got separated into boys and girls, as it wasn't cabins we'd be sleeping in. It was proper camping with tents and everything, which was why I was so excited about it. I always felt at peace with nature and the outdoors. We were guided over to a meadow that was surrounded by trees and shrubberies. It was so tranquil and still, the only thing that could be heard was the crickets nearby. There was a large lake that was beautifully still and had a glassy surface. I couldn't understand why a place so beautiful had such horrible background stories. As I was admiring the silence, my train of thought was interrupted by Jack shoving into my shoulder.
You need some help with your tent?
Yeah, why not? We built the tent in silence, and the time seemed to pass rather quickly. Afterwards, we just sat by the lakeside and talked for a bit before heading back for some dinner.
You alright? You seem pretty distant these days. You're not yourself.
Yeah, I'm alright. I've just got a lot on my mind these days.
Things still tough at home?
Yeah, as always. But that's nothing I can't handle.
Well, if you're sure.
Honestly, it's all good. We should probably head back. They'll be dishing out the food soon. I smirked and shoved him in the shoulder. Dinner went by like a blur. I don't think I was even paying much attention. It was like having a barbecue, but really late at night. The stench of the burgers, the hot dogs and chicken bits filled the air. The food was very tasty, and soon I was stuffed to the gunners. After dinner, we were all trying to keep our eyes open, so we crawled into our tents and turned off our flashlights. I was sharing a tent with both Ruby and Jack, as Ella and Rusty wanted to share a tent together. We all said our goodnights and laid down ready for sleep. It felt like I had only just closed my eyes when I heard a strange screeching noise. It was a sound I was unfamiliar with. I just lay there thinking, and attempted to return to sleep, only to jolt awake again by the same sound. It was starting to irritate me now. I lay back down and had just put my head on the pillow when I heard it again. I shot bolt upright in bed, as did both Ruby and Jack this time.
What the fuck was that?
I don't know, but it's the third time I've heard it tonight.
It's creeping me out.
We sat there in silence for what felt like an hour, and we heard it again. Right, that is it. I'm going out there to see what the fuck is making all the noise.
I'm coming with you.
Me too. I don't want to wait in this tent on my own.
We threw on our coats and boots and unzipped the tent entrance. The ground was wet and soft. It had been raining. The tops of the tents all glistened with the rain that had fallen upon them. We headed towards the woods at the other side of the meadow. We walked in silence. The only sound to be heard was the sound of our feet treading on the grass. Suddenly, there it was, the screeching noise, again. Only this time, it sounded closer. Much closer. And it was followed by another voice. A male voice.
Let her go, you prick. Swear to God, if you don't let her go, I'm gonna tear you a new asshole.
As strange as it seemed, and as disorientated as I was, I could swear I'd heard that voice before.
We should probably head back now.
No! If someone's in trouble, we should help them.
Jack's right. If that was us, we'd find a way of helping them out somehow. As we got closer, the screeching became more frequent. Suddenly there was another voice.
Ah! Let go of me, you freak! You're hurting me! Rusty, don't just stand there! Help me!
Rusty!
If Rusty's there,
Then that female voice must be Ella.
What the fuck is going on? Come on.
he insisted, and he started to run. As both me and Ruby ran behind him, the screeching started to get louder. As I was running, it felt like I was picking up speed. A clearing was coming up in front of me, and I was headed right for it, until I felt Jack's arm outstretched and holding me back. Oh, will you let me go, you dick?
Shh!
He silenced me, and pointed to the clearing. My stomach gave a disgusted jolt when my eyes met what was going on. This very tall, human-looking figure was just standing there, with its back to us. We just stood there, frozen to the spot. I couldn't move my legs. As the figure turned to the side, I could see it had no hair. It was hairless all over. It had no eyes or nose on its face. The only thing on its head but a large tooth-filled hole where the mouth should be. Its skin was all wrinkled like it was an elderly person ready for death. As I ran my eyes over the figure, I noticed a limp shape hanging from its hand. There was what looked like a pile of entrails on the wet ground at its feet. As I ran my eyes over the figure, I noticed a limp shape hanging from its hand. There was what looked like a pile of entrails on the wet ground at its feet. The smell was so overpowering, I had to stifle my urge to vomit. Rusty was nowhere to be seen. I hoped he had gotten away safely. Suddenly, the silhouette grabbed the lifeless body with both hands and snapped it in half. Ruby let out a scream, and now the creature was looking right in our direction, with his hand outstretched in front of him. As I looked at his hand, in the palm was what looked like an eye. It was looking right at me. I couldn't move. I just stared in shock at the horrifying creature standing in my line of vision. I glanced at the hole where its mouth was, which was dripping with dark red blood. He'd been eating the bloody pile at his feet. He let out a screech, and I yelled, "Let's get the fuck out of here. Now!" We all ran back to camp as fast as our legs would take us. When we got back to the tents, we said nothing. I think we were in too much shock. We didn't sleep. We just sat there, breathing deeply in stunned silence. The journey back home was a bit of a blur. I can't remember saying goodbye to anyone. I just remember getting home, dumping my bag in my bedroom, flopping down on my bed, and just laying there staring at the ceiling. I reached under my bed and pulled out my laptop. I carried it over to my desk next to the window and opened my Google browser. I sat for a moment not knowing what to type. "The Legend of the Pale Man," I typed finally. I opened one of the top pages and read along until I stopped at something near the end of one of the paragraphs. "Don't let him see you," it read. "If he sees you, you're done for." I just closed the laptop, got dressed, and climbed into bed. I've been to 4 memorial ceremonies this year. I'm the only one left. Ruby and Jack were reported missing several days after they had returned home. Their bodies were never found. As for Ella and Rusty, they never returned home from the camp trip. Their parents are still looking for answers. Mum and Dad have no idea. They just think they all ran away from home. But I know different. I've been sitting, looking out this window for several hours now. I'm sitting at my laptop, writing it all down. It's the first time I've been able to talk about it since it happened. He's taunting me. I can see his shadow. He's just standing there, menacingly. The past 3 nights, he's been stood outside my house, just watching. I know my time I have left here is short. I just don't know how short. He's just waiting for his moment.